The word magnite seems like a shorter version of the word magnetite, the most magnetic, naturally occurring mineral on planet Earth. The car magnite is like a shorter version of a typical SUV, a body style which is now the most magnetic of all natural car types. Well, Nissan sure hopes that a lot of people are drawn to this compact crossover because this is now literally their make or break product for India. So will it really attract a lot of people with its clever engineering, or will it be a low-cost product that will end up repelling the customers? Let's find out. The low-cost tag often repels the Indian buyer no matter what their pocket size. Case in point, the lukewarm response that was given to the low-cost engineering marvels like the Tata Nano or Nissan's own Datsun lineup. Which is why you see the more premium Nissan badge on what looks like a Datsun grille, which is why this brown color comes from Nissan's premium Infiniti line of cars, and which is also why you get these LED fog lamps, LED daytime running lamps and LED headlamps as well, a feature that is considered to be premium. And surprisingly, these LED lights work quite well in the Indian scheme of things too, and are quite powerful and illuminating on the road. There are no LEDs at the rear though, but the tail lights are designed wisely to mimic the look. And to ensure that the tail looks sophisticated, the Magnite has gone with a layered look for its bumpers and overall tail design. The Magnite was originally conceived to be a Datsun product, which is why the resemblance in the face with the Ready Go. Now that design didn't work too well, but honestly on this size, it looks rather smart. Speaking of the size, the Magnite has a shorter wheelbase as compared to the Renault Triber, the car that it shares its CMF-A platform with. And in terms of its length, it is comparable to compact crossovers like the Nexon or the Brezza. Even the boot space is comparable to most premium hatchbacks or sub-4 meter crossovers. So while the front resembles the Ready Go, the rear has strong hints of the Nissan Kicks, especially if you look at the treatment given to the D-pillar or the treatment of the rub rails even. But unlike the Kicks, this one doesn't have a receding roofline or that pinched effect at the rear. It goes with more upright proportions, relatively more upright proportions, and that gives it appearance of being more SUV and less hatchback in its crossover form. The side profile also shows off some nicely done details like the squared off wheel arches, the 16-inch machine finished wheels, and the window trim that extends towards the bonnet to incorporate the Nissan Magnite badging and highlight a high shoulder line, which adds the visual sense of this being the tall crossover. Speaking of badges, this is the first Indian car to wear the new Nissan badge, and because of this relatively higher roof, ingress and egress is actually quite easy. And once you get inside the car, you will be amazed at the kind of space this offers. In fact, the rear seat space is better than most hatchbacks out there and is comparable to some of the compact SUVs or some of the sub-4 meter SUVs. Knee room is excellent, and because the seat is set higher, foot space is actually quite good too. Even the headroom you can see is quite good for my height of 5'8", and even someone who is 6-footer, they might just feel at ease in here. This will still be not very roomy, but they will still be at ease in here. Also, the windows are nice and large. They are complemented by these quarter glasses in here, so it gives a nice airy feel to this cabin despite all the dark colors that are used. You also get this center armrest, which has two very shallow cup holders and also a small space to keep your phone. Now this space is good enough for 2 adults and a kid when the center armrest is up. You also get 4 adjustable headrests for all the passengers, so it's not only more comfortable but also safer. All the seats are quite softly cushioned though, and our day-long drive didn't feel very comforting by the end of it. The Magnite safety features include frontal airbags, ABS with EBD and ISOFIX mounts. But for this price point, it's nice of Nissan to have thrown in a 360-degree camera and a low-line tire pressure monitoring system as well. There's also a puddle lamp for the front door, and while the entry to the front is easy, you will often hit your knee against the awkwardly large speaker housing while exiting the front doors. Like in the rear, space is the big keyword that you will notice the moment you enter the front side of the cabin as well. There's space for everything. There are 2 cup holders here, there's space for knickknacks, space for gadgets that need wired charging. There's also a large wireless charging pad that can take plus size phones without a problem, and it is complemented very nicely by wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. So that is big news. What I also like is the infotainment. It's got a very simple layout, very easy to understand, no matter what your age, no matter what kind of devices you use, it's very easy to understand. What I also like is within the audio menu, it will also let you set the audio levels for different things like the overall audio, for radio, for navigation, for your telephone, for your ringer, for the voice recognition even. So you can have different audio levels for all of this. And I like this kind of customizability or this kind of flexibility with something like audio. So like I said, it's a very easy to use layout. This is an 8-inch screen. It's complemented further by a 7-inch screen here behind the steering wheel. It's a nice big instrumentation screen. Looks very nice. It's got nice cool animations that make it very easy to read. And all the info is very nicely laid out. It's a full color display. You can also set how bright you want it, and I think it looks quite cool. It looks quite youthful, so to say. The instrumentation has a hexagonal housing that complements the shape of the high-set AC vents. When I first saw the photos, I thought the AC vent should have been placed lower and the screen should have sat higher for a safer operation. But honestly, it isn't that big a concern now that I've spent time with the car. The dashboard is also tilted 5 degrees towards the driver, making the commonly used controls and spaces easy to use and reach. Even the glove box is a large 10-litre unit, but its shutter lines aren't clean, and our tester showed scuff marks and had constant, annoying rattles. Now let's talk about the bits that I don't like, and as always, I am going to go nitpicking. For example, the infotainment, it's quite laggy. Sometimes it takes multiple attempts to enter a particular menu that you want. The wireless CarPlay, it's quite iffy, keeps dropping the connection. And this particular one has also been, well, sort of crashing on me once in a while. But I think these are teething issues and will be sorted going forward. The speaker system. Now, this is supposedly the higher spec speakers that you can get as a part of the tech pack, but they sound quite tinny. I love that instrumentation. But the temperature readout, the ambient temperature readout on that is giving some utterly wrong figures. It has shown me everything from 43 degrees, 48 degrees, 55 degrees even, when the actual temperature outside was hardly 32. So, well, that's a bit misleading. Also, I love the textures that you see here. You also get a lighter color when you settle for the lower variants, and I think it looks quite good as well even on those. But while these textures or the common touch points like these AC knobs or the switches under the infotainment, they feel premium, some of the other switches that you have on this side or even on the doors, plastics like these, the door lock here, even the wireless charging pad, it feels low rent in comparison, and that difference is quite stark. It's a big contrasting difference between the two. So, you know, while I like quite a few things, it's more of a mixed bag, and it only sort of makes me hope that it lives up to the test of time, is reliable enough, the kind of reliability that you expect of a Japanese brand. For the price at which the Magnite resides, it is commendable what Nissan has managed to pack in. But the fit and finish isn't up to the competition levels. And honestly, the Magnite feels a little fragile, and in that, it feels more Datsun than Nissan. The key fob is typical Nissan. It hasn't changed over the years. The first time I saw this was with the Micra. The first time I also saw another feature with the Micra was actually keyless entry and go. So the Magnite also gets it. But there's one very interesting feature that we have with this new key fob now. For example, if the key fob were to leave the car with the engine running, it happens quite a few times to me where, I just go for a drive in one of these cars and then someone else takes the car from me to go continue shooting and the key remains with me. Now, in such a scenario, if the key is not in the car and the engine's running, and if I try to switch off the car, it doesn't happen. It tells me on the display that there is no key card in the car, which is what happens to most other cars, but it also doesn't turn off the engine, which is a very good thing. For me to turn off the engine without the key in it, I have to long press on this switch. I think this is a very thoughtful feature and can avoid a lot of inconvenience. I know because I have experienced it. Can I have the key back, please? Thank you. Now, when you thumb the starter, the engine comes to life in a typical 3-cylinder manner. So there is that 3-cylinder thrum. The idling RPM keeps fluctuating on this car between 900 to 1100 RPM depending on how warm the engine is. but you feel a lot of pulsations. This is a typical trait of a 3-cylinder engine. We've also seen it in some of the higher end cars, so I will not really blame the car for it or the low cost engineering for it. And this engine that I'm talking about right now is the turbocharged 1-liter engine, but I expect a similar characteristic or a similar trait even with the naturally aspirated 1-liter counterpart. So as you may have noticed already, there are 2 engine options for the Magnite, and both petrol. There is no diesel at the moment, and nor has Nissan confirmed if there will be one in the future. Well, the engine is tuned for a very good city performance, very good cruising on the highway as well, and that makes it very tractable in the city as well. It gets off the mark quite cleanly, the power delivery feels normal, feels quite linear. There is a hint of turbo lag under the 2000 RPM mark, but if you are driving at moderate city speeds, that is the only time when you will actually get a hint of that turbo lag, because that is where you will want to build speed quicker to negotiate a gap in traffic, and that is where it will make that turbo lag evident. But in bumper to bumper traffic, or even when driving on the highway at highway speeds, you will not really notice that turbo lag all that much, because especially at highway speeds, you're usually in the meat of the power band. The sweet spot for this engine is between 2 to 4000 RPM, and you're usually in that zone. So pulling overtakes at highway speeds, it's not that big a difficulty. That said, if you are running with a full house, if you have 4 idles in the car, or if you are with a full house and on inclines, that is where you will need frequent gear shifts, or you'll have to keep the engine on the boil or rev higher to ensure a smoother performance. The Magnite Turbo cruises at 100 km an hour in top gear with about 2200 revs, so highway cruising or slow city commutes seem pretty relaxed for this engine. That also reflects in its fuel economy. We didn't get a chance to sample the less powerful naturally aspirated engine, and while our time with the Triber tells us that this engine will have adequate performance for city use, it is the turbo variant that we would strongly recommend for all-round performance. The turbo variant can be had with a CVT automatic or a 5-speed manual transmission. The 5-speed manual is the one that I'm driving right now. Now for the manual, the clutch pedal it's got a very light feel, but the pedal travel is quite a bit. In fact, if you look at the footwell, you can see that the clutch pedal sticks out quite a bit. And while like I said, the clutch pedal feel is light, that pedal travel is what makes it a little cumbersome when you're driving this car in bumper to bumper traffic. And because this is a car that is intended more for urban use, this can get cumbersome with time. Now, as far as the gear shifter is concerned, it's got long throws and it's got a bit of a clunky operation. And for those of you who like to keep your palm on the gear shifter while driving, you'll also feel a lot of powertrain lash. You'll feel a lot of motion from the linkages when you're driving, and maybe there's fluctuation in the acceleration, the deceleration. You can feel all of that in the gear stick itself. Now, this is not so much to do with low-cost engineering. It is a very typical Nissan trait. We've even experienced this powertrain lash on some of the higher-end Nissan manuals, so that is not a big concern. The automatic is the latest generation CVT from Nissan, but it doesn't seem as well tuned as the CVT that we've experienced in the Honda Amaze, for example. The Magnite has a more pronounced rubber band effect, but it is evident only on the highway and not so much in the city. The CVT also claims better fuel economy than the manual, but we couldn't put that to the test. That said, the manual did impress us with its fuel economy, and even the 0 to 100 figure isn't too bad. Now, before we move to the dynamics part of it, there's something that I definitely have to talk about: the visibility. The windscreen is nice and wide. I like the visibility. The cornering visibility is also quite good. There's a nice curvature to the windscreen that is something that I'm glad looking at, because usually with low-cost engineered cars, you get a flat windscreen. This one is quite nice. If you look at the roof liner, it's nicely curved, and the sun visor has been placed at an angle. It's not right in front of you in a flat angle like it is on most cars. It is at an angle. The advantage to that is it does cut out the sun if it's in front of you, no problem at all. But because of this angle, when you open it and put it on the side, it leaves a very small window between itself and the B-pillar, unlike most other cars. So that definitely reduces glare a lot more, and it is a lot more functional. I quite like this design. Good job there, Nissan. Let's now talk about the dynamics. The first bit, the steering. not very impressed. I was hoping for a sportier setup from Nissan. It clearly isn't so. It feels quite vague, and especially at highway speeds, it doesn't weigh up at all, and it just doesn't give me with a confident feeling when I'm at triple digit speeds. What dampens that further is that the car also feels quite floaty at highway speeds. So if you're not running a full house, if there aren't 4 people in the car, it becomes quite bouncy, it becomes quite floaty, and it just doesn't inspire confidence. However, with a full house, because there is weight in the car, it feels much nicer to drive. Speaking of weight, it will tip the scales between 900 to 1100 kilos depending on the variant you choose, which is pretty light. And that certainly has its advantages in terms of the handling, in terms of the fuel economy, but the high-speed dynamics, well, they just don't add up that well. What further dampens the entire handling package of this car is the squishy suspension setup. So high-speed lane changes aren't a problem, but the moment there is a curve in the road, you have to take a curve at a slightly higher speed, and I'm not even talking triple-digit speeds, I'm talking about speeds like 80, 85 kilometers an hour. There is quite a bit of vertical movement, there's quite a bit of roll, there's quite a bit of lean on the outer wheels. So much so that it sometimes feels like the car's also going into an oversteer. Oversteer, not understeer. It feels like it's going into an oversteer. It feels like the tail just wants to quickly step out, and not in a very nice way. Treat the Magnite like a compact urban SUV, however, and things will be much better. In that respect, it actually slots in between cars like the Espresso and cars like the typical sub 4 meter SUVs like the Sonnet or the Brezza, the likes of it. So some people asked us, does it compete with the Suzuki Ignis? Well, not really. The Suzuki Ignis is a lot more hatchbackish in that sense. This one still gives you a slightly more commanding view of the road. This one feels a slightly more crossoverish kind of a vehicle as compared to what the Ignis manages. So it's not as hatchbackish, so to say, but it does feel very car-like to drive, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, the visibility is excellent. You can get an easy judgment of all the 4 corners of the car. Couple that with the slightly higher seating, and it is a very easy to drive car. So if you are upgrading from a smaller hatchback onto something like this, you don't want to go to something like maybe a Sonnet or a Creta, this is a good midway point and will not overwhelm you, neither with the power nor with the way it feels in terms of its size. So overall, this is a nice sweet spot if you're upgrading from something like, say, an entry-level hatchback. The squishy suspension setup has its advantages. The ride quality is actually quite good. It is a little bit on the noisier side. You can hear the thuds, you can hear every rut, every joint in the road, and that instantly reminds you that this is not a very premium product. But that said, despite all these noises, the ride quality is actually quite good. Whether at city speeds, even at highway speeds, the ride quality is actually quite supple. But that squishy nature of the suspension, like I said, it has an adverse effect on the handling of this car. It's certainly not a sporty handler, or certainly not a sharp car to drive. It certainly feels a lot safer than something like the Espresso, but it's not as sharp as something like, say, a Sonnet or a Hyundai Venue. The braking on the Magnite is actually quite good. It's got a nice progressive feel to the pedal. It's not too bitey, which is a very good thing. But again, couple that with the squishy nature of the suspension, and at highway speeds, if you have to brake urgently, the car does lose its way. It has got anti-lock brakes, but there is quite a bit of nosedive. And again, if you're not with a full house, if you're the only person driving, under emergency braking, under hard braking, there is a fair bit of dive, and an uneven dive to the right-hand side of the vehicle, and that sort of gets unnerving. Despite that unnerving feel, the lightweight of the car awards it good braking figures. In a nutshell then, the Magnite has decent figures to boast of, but its dynamics aren't as confidence-inspiring as some of the other sub-4 meter crossovers. In fact, the Magnite doesn't come across as a direct competitor to any of them in terms of its dynamics or feel. It has headlining features and a great exterior design, which is certainly going to bring in big numbers for Nissan, but how this car ages remains to be seen. Nissan will also have to improve on its service quality and network if it intends to cater to a wider audience with this car. And while the sub 4 meter crossovers needn't be too worried about this compact Nissan, the Magnite is likely to attract a sizable chunk of customers away from the compact hatchbacks and sedans. What do you think of the Magnite? Would you choose this over a proper sub 4 meter crossover or maybe even a premium hatchback? Or do you think this is more of a contender for those shopping in the compact hatchback or sedan space? Let us know what your thoughts are. Thank you so much for watching.